Meantime, Kamala Harris had a big, enthusiastic crowd of about 20,000 at her Oakland rally Sunday, and she gave them a lot of progressive red meat to get them fired up. She bashed the border wall as a medieval vanity project, called for Medicare for all, pre-K education, and debt-free college, and even said under this administration, democracy itself is in jeopardy. She also attacked the criminal justice system, which she says she's been a part of for 30 years.
We need to speak that truth so we can deal with it. Let's also speak the truth that too many unarmed black men and women are killed in America.
Harris's other memorable line was when she asked the crowd who we are as a country, and then answered, "We are better than this." Dana?
Dan Springer, thank you. For more on this, I'm joined by Colin Reed, Senior Vice President of Definers Public Affairs and a former Executive Director of America Rising. Ty Matsdorf is a Senior Manager at the Messina Group and formerly with the DCCC. Good to have you here. Let me start with you, Ty, on the Democratic side. 20,000 people showing up for a campaign announcement by Kamala Harris. Good showing? Great showing.
One of the hardest things to do is roll out a presidential campaign well. She started on Good Morning America, the most popular TV show with voters across the country, on Martin Luther King Day, rich in symbolism, then went right to South Carolina, then a huge rally. I mean, I still think that somebody like a Joe Biden is probably a little bit of a front runner just because of his stature in the party, the name, but Kamala Harris came out strong, a lot of energy, 20,000 people, you can't argue with that.
Colin, last time you were on, because her book had just come out, and one of the things you pointed out is that she didn't seem to have an ability to really answer the questions about her past as a prosecutor. Did you see anything different on Sunday?
No, and I agree with Ty. She had a nice rollout. She got a week's worth of earned media with the two separate rollouts, and I think that was smart on her part. But the two core weaknesses in her candidacy are, one, why do you want to be president? I don't think she's come up with a compelling message other than she's against Donald Trump, but she can join 35 other people in sharing that. And two, her record as a prosecutor. I don't know that there's any place in the Democratic Party today for someone who's been the top cop for California and has places in her record that will not be loved by progressives.
And before we go to Howard Schultz, what about being the front runner this early? Too early?
A little too early. I think we're 641 days away from an election.
Are you counting?
I'm not counting, but if I was, that's what it would be. And I think it's a little too early to say things like front runner.
All right, I want to talk about Howard Schultz. He had a big rollout. I've actually, in the middle of reading his book, take a listen to his question about, it was a specific question, what would you do if president? Here's how he answered.
Would you raise taxes on corporations back to where they were if you were president?
Well, I don't want to talk in the hypothetical about what I would do if I was president.
But Colin, isn't a presidential campaign all about talking about what you would do if you were president?
Yeah, and he's a first-time candidate, so I'd expect some jitters along the way.
Yeah.
But here's what I learned last night from the interview, that Howard Schultz, who is a self-professed lifelong Democrat, from what we can tell, extremely progressive on issue after issue, there's no room in him in today's Democratic Party as a wealthy CEO, and that speaks to how far the Democratic Party has moved to the left. And frankly, the blowback today has largely been from the left more than the right when it comes to Howard Schultz's candidacy.
And also Mike Bloomberg doing this statement today, Ty, he said, in 2020, the great likelihood is that an independent would just split the anti-Trump vote and end up re-electing the president. That's a risk I refused to run in 2016, and we can't afford to run it now. We must remain united, and we must not allow any candidate to divide or fracture us. The stakes couldn't be higher. What do you hear from your fellow Democrats about the concern about an independent run by Schultz?
Well, part of it is like, what is the end game, right? Like, if your goal is to get 270 electoral votes, as an independent, you're not going to get on the ballot in probably a quarter of the states. So you're not even playing the full ballot field. So really, all you're doing is sort of acting as the spoiler. And if I had Karl Rove's whiteboard right now, there would be a Venn diagram where you've got the base on each side and then this overlapping middle. And what somebody like a Howard Schultz would do is pull from that middle. And right now, there are more people who would probably gravitate towards this side of the Venn diagram than the Republican side. side.
And what do you think of that?
Well, these business folks, these guys who come from the business world, I mean, Mike Bloomberg took a long, hard look at doing what Howard Schultz is thinking about doing now. Mike Bloomberg decided there wasn't a path in 2016, and now he's running as a Democrat. He gave a lot of money to pro-democratic groups last year. He's trying to remake himself as a full-board Democrat because he's concluded that there really is no path, logistically speaking, for a role.
But do you think that for one of the messages that Howard Schultz is talking about, we saw in the 60 Minutes clip, we said people are exhausted, they want, they might not like the far left economic view for the country, they don't like the identity politics, but this has just been so exhausting and chaotic for them. Does it speak to those suburban voters that both the Trump campaign and whoever runs as a Democrat are going to be going after?
Well, I think you have to speak to those suburban voters because they went Trump in large part in 2016 and they flipped to the Democratic column in 2018. So it's smart to make a play for them. But as Ty points out, logistically, the way our system is currently constructed, it's hard to see a viable path.
Could this actually help the Democratic Party, though, Ty, in trying to figure out a way to not go so far left where the country is just not there yet? They're not for the Medicare for all. I saw today that former Obama folks are getting together to try to make sure that the Democrats focus on strengthening Obamacare rather than going for Medicare for all. Could Schultz actually help the party get back to some equilibrium?
Well, he's going to have a platform, and he's going to force a discussion on certain issues, and I think that that's right. Like, again, we just saw a record turnout in 2018, vote for sort of pragmatic Democrats, so moderate pragmatic Democrats, and I think that that shows us a good path for 2020. And look, I think that what Schultz is doing is fine for sort of like the marketplace of ideas, but to Colin's point, like electorally speaking, if his goal is to stop Donald Trump, which he professed it to be, this is not the way to do it, and that's what Colin was saying about Bloomberg.
That's interesting to talk to you about that, about the very specifics, about the numbers, like how do you actually, you got to get to 270.
Yep.
President Trump figured out how to do it last time. Okay, Colin Reed and Ty Matsdorf, thank you.
Thank you.
Lawmakers are working to strike a deal on immigration.